Senator John Thune serves on both the Budget and Finance committees. He joins me now. Senator, good morning.
Chuck. Good morning.
All right, let me start with what tomorrow's meeting is supposed to be about, and that is starting to get down to brass tacks about the issue of taxes. You know, can there be any sort of agreement that Republicans can sign on to that allows for some sort of tax revenue, some sort of revenue increase? Maybe it'll be in the form of getting rid of some tax breaks that Republicans can sign on to. Can you envision a scenario like that?
I think that's a really hard sell up here, Chuck. Most Republicans, if not all Republicans, believe fundamentally that what we have here is a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And as much as the administration and the congressional Democrats want to make this about increasing taxes and creating more revenue, we believe that we've got to bend the spending curve down, and that's what these discussions ought to be about. And that's what I think our negotiators are trying to drive home. And I hope the administration, Vice President Biden, and the Democrats will come to that conclusion as well. We don't need to be talking about revenues until we've dealt with spending.
Well, let's talk about one set of revenues that actually are popping up on the campaign trail on the Republican side, and that has to do with farm, specifically ethanol subsidies. You're from an agriculture state. You're hearing this stuff. Make the case for agricultural subsidies and why they shouldn't be gotten rid of.
Well, look, I mean, I think agriculture realizes, and they're willing to do their fair share to deal with the deficit situation as well. And if you look at where the cuts, in many of the cuts that have already occurred in spending, many of them have been taken out of the ag budget. And I think that the ethanol industry recognizes, I've been working with them and with a lot of my colleagues on both sides up here on Capitol Hill to reform those tax policies as well. They recognize that they can't continue to have the VTEC in its current form, the VTEC being the blender's credit that applies to ethanol production. And so agriculture has been at the table, and I think there are some things that will continue to be looked at in the ag budget. But remember this: only 10 cents out of every dollar that's spent on agriculture actually goes to production agriculture. And in fact, most of the farm programs now are designed, they're connected to prices, actual prices. So when commodity prices are high, those payments aren't made. So the spending on overall in production agriculture is significantly less than what it ever has been before. And I think that agriculture is willing, of course, to be a part of the solution, but not disproportionately. Are
you concerned that the ethanol industry in particular is being used as a punching bag by members of your own party running for president in Iowa, Tim Pawlenty, John Huntsman in particular? I think that everybody, it's very popular right now, it's become popular at least, to attack ethanol. Frankly, I think what people have to remember is that ethanol displaces about 445 million barrels of oil every year. It's now about 10% of our entire fuel mix in this country, and if you took that out, you would see significantly higher gas prices. That being said, I think everybody recognizes, including the ethanol industry, that the policies that we have in place today are going to have to change, and that's why we've been looking proactively at trying to reform those and come up with a way of creating more market access for people to get to ethanol at the pump, but knowing full well that we're going to have to contribute to what is a very difficult financial and fiscal environment here in Washington. You know, yesterday, Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke sort of gave a state of the economic recovery, if you will, speech of sorts yesterday. Talked about various issues, in particular gas prices and the housing issue. On housing, he talked about it as this significant drag on any sort of economic recovery, but didn't really come up with some sort of answer. Do you have an answer? Do the Republicans have? I haven't heard an answer from anybody at this point when it comes to housing. Well, I think housing is a very big part of what led us into this economic downturn. It will probably lead us out. But I think the best thing that we can have for housing is a growing, expanding economy so that people can make their mortgage payments. And right now we've got this 9.1% unemployment. 45% of the people who are unemployed have been unemployed for more than 6 months, which is a higher number than what we saw in the Great Depression. And it doesn't seem like this administration gets that, Chuck. I mean, if you look at energy policy, trade policy, tax policy, budgets, I mean, we haven't passed a budget up here in the Senate for 770 days. I mean, we've added
trillion in
there's a
spending
chicken
in that time period.
We got a chicken and egg thing here with housing, in that it hurts consumer confidence. If people feel like the value of their home, and there were voluntary programs to try to get the banks to do these things, but it seems as if the banks don't want to cooperate here on what is clearly assets that no longer are of the same value that they want to keep on their books, but nobody has the stomach to have government go after the banks on this, right?
Well, I think that's true, and the banks, of course, the regulators are breathing down the necks of the banks. The banks are concerned about making sure that they've got sufficient collateral on these a lot of these mortgages that are out there. I don't know that we ever fully got to the bottom of the housing bubble, and a lot of it was because there was this serial intervention on the part of the federal government. I don't think that it ever found its natural floor. This will come back, but I'm not sure that additional government intervention is going to solve that issue. I think, again, the best thing that we can do is get the economy growing and expanding again and creating jobs, and that seems to be, although that's something rhetorically the president talks a lot about, something that there's very little action to support his rhetoric.
Senator, very quickly on 2012, any second thoughts? It seems that there's still a vacuum there. A lot of people donors sitting on the sidelines, activists, they want somebody else. Are you at all interested again?
Well, we've got a strong field out there, Chuck, and it's probably continuing to grow. I think there will be other candidates that get in.
You do think it's going to grow? Okay.
Well, I think there are others that'll probably get into this thing. But look, we've got good candidates. I made my decision, and I'm looking to the future, looking forward, not looking to the past. But I think we're going to have a very competitive presidential election in 2012, and a lot of very competitive Senate and House races around the country too.
Are you ready to endorse anybody in the presidential?
Not at this point. I mean, the field's developing. I'm not sure it's fully set yet, but we're having conversations with some of the candidates.
All right, Senator John Thune, Republican from South Dakota. Senator, thanks for joining me this morning.